Among the military orders of past ages, that of the Knights Templars, founded for the defense of the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, with its lofty motive, its superb organization and discipline, and its history extending over nearly 2 centuries, is justly accounted one of the most illustrious. At the period when this extraordinary and romantic order came into existence, the contrasting spirits of warlike enterprise and monastic retirement were drawing men, some from the field to the cloister, others from the life of ascetic piety to the scenes of strife. There appeared a strange blending of these two tendencies, which indeed was the leading characteristic of the time. This union of the religious with the militant spirit had been promoted by the enthusiasm of the crusades which had already been undertaken, and among the crusaders themselves, the blended spiritual and military ideal of the Holy War had its complete development. To begin, let us recall the reasons and the beginnings of the crusades themselves. Upon the legendary discovery of the Holy Sepulchre by Helena, the mother of Constantine, about 300 years after the death of Christ, and the consequent erection, as it is said, by her great son, the first Christian emperor of Rome, of the magnificent Church of the Holy Sepulchre over the sacred spot, a tide of pilgrimage set in toward Jerusalem, which increased in strength as Christianity gradually spread throughout Europe. When in AD 637 the Holy City was surrendered to the Saracens, the Caliph Omar gave guarantees for the security of the Christian population. Under this safeguard, the pilgrimages to Jerusalem continued to increase, until in 1064 the Holy Sepulchre was visited by 7,000 pilgrims, led by an archbishop and 3 bishops. But in 1065, Jerusalem was taken by the Turks, who massacred 3,000 citizens and placed the command of the city in savage hands. Terrible oppression of the Christians there followed. The Patriarch of Jerusalem was dragged by the hair of his head over the sacred pavement of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and cast into a dungeon for ransom. Extortion, imprisonment, and massacre were indiscriminately visited upon the people. Such were the conditions that aroused the indignant spirit of Christendom and prepared it for the cry of Peter the Hermit, which awoke the wild enthusiasm of the Crusades. When Jerusalem was captured by the Crusaders under Godfrey of Bouillon in 1099, the zeal of pilgrimage burst forth anew, but although Jerusalem was delivered, Palestine was still infested with the infidels, who made it as hazardous as before for the pilgrims entering there. Some means for their protection must be found, and out of this necessity grew the great military order, commonly known as the Knights Templar. To alleviate the dangers and distresses to which the pilgrim enthusiasts were exposed, to guard the honor of the saintly virgins and matrons, and to protect the grey hairs of the venerable palmers, 9 noble knights formed a holy brotherhood in arms and entered into a solemn compact to aid one another in clearing the highways of infidels and robbers, and in protecting the pilgrims through the passes and defiles of the mountains to the Holy City. Warmed with the religious and military fervor of the day, and animated by the sacredness of the cause to which they had devoted their swords, they called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Jesus Christ. They renounced the world and its pleasures, and in the Holy Church of the Resurrection, in the presence of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, they embraced vows of perpetual chastity, obedience, and poverty, after the manner of monks, uniting in themselves the 2 most popular qualities of the age, devotion and valor, and exercising them in the most popular of all enterprises, the protection of the pilgrims and of the road to the Holy Sepulchre. They speedily acquired a vast reputation and a splendid renown. At first, we are told, they had no church and no particular place of abode, but in the year 1118, they had rendered such good and acceptable service to the Christians that Baldwin II, King of Jerusalem, granted them a place of habitation within the sacred enclosure of the temple on Mount Moriah, amid those holy and magnificent structures, partly erected by the Christian Emperor Justinian and partly built by the Caliph Omar. On the conquest of Jerusalem by the Crusaders, the crescent was torn down and was replaced by an immense golden cross, and the edifice was then consecrated to the services of the Christian religion, but retained its simple appellation of the Temple of the Lord. On the reconquest of Jerusalem by the Muslims, this venerable church was converted into a mosque. It was enclosed, together with the great Muslim Temple of the Lord, erected by the Caliph Omar, within a large area by a high stone wall which runs around the edge of the summit of Mount Moriah and guards from the profane tread of the unbeliever the whole of that sacred ground whereon once stood the gorgeous temple of the wisest of kings. When the holy city was retaken by the Crusaders, the various buildings became the property of the kings of Jerusalem and was vulgarly called the Temple of Solomon. It was this edifice or temple on Mount Moriah which was appropriated to the use of the poor fellow soldiers of Jesus Christ, as they had no church and no particular place of abode, and from it they derived their name of Knights Templars. The rule of the poor fellow soldiers of Jesus Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, arranged by St. Bernard and sanctioned by the Holy Fathers of the Council of Troy, for the government and regulation of the monastic and military society of the temple, is principally of a religious character and of an austere and gloomy cast. It is divided into 72 heads or chapters and is preceded by a short prologue addressed
to all who disdain to follow after their own wills and desire with purity of mind to fight for the Most High and true King, to put on the armor of obedience and to associate together with piety and humility for the defense of the Holy Catholic Church, and to employ a pure diligence and a steady perseverance in the exercise of our sacred profession, so that they might share in the happy destiny reserved for the holy warriors who have given up their lives for Christ.
The rule enjoins severe devotional exercises, self-mortification, fasting and prayer, and a constant attendance at matins, vespers, and on all the services of the Church, that, being refreshed and satisfied with heavenly food, instructed and established with heavenly precepts after the consummation of the divine mysteries, none might be afraid of the fight, but be prepared for the crown.
If unable to attend the regular service of God, the absent brother is for matins to say over 13 paternosters, for every hour 7, and for vespers 9. When any Templar draweth nigh unto death, the chaplains and clerk are to assemble and offer up a solemn mass for his soul. The surrounding brethren are to spend the night in prayer, and 100 paternosters are to be repeated for the dead brother.
Moreover, say the Holy Fathers,
we do strictly enjoin you, that with divine and most tender charity ye do daily bestow as much meat and drink as was given to that brother when alive unto some poor man for 40 days.
The brethren are on all occasions to speak sparingly and to wear a grave and serious deportment. They are to be constant in the exercise of charity and almsgiving, to have a watchful care over all sick brethren, and to support and sustain all old men. They are not to receive letters from their parents, relations, or friends without the license of the master, and all gifts are immediately to be taken to the latter or to the treasurer to be disposed of as he may direct. They are moreover to receive no service or attendance from a woman, and are commanded above all things to shun feminine kisses. Many illustrious knights of the best families in Europe aspired to the habit and vows, but, however exalted their rank, they were not received within the bosom of the fraternity until they had proved themselves by their conduct worthy of such a fellowship. The candidates, moreover, previous to their admission, were required to make reparation and satisfaction for all damage done by them at any time to churches and to public or private property. An astonishing enthusiasm was excited throughout Christendom in behalf of the Templars. Princes and nobles, sovereigns and their subjects vied with each other in heaping gifts and benefits upon them, and scarce a will of importance was made without an article in it in their favor. Many illustrious persons on their deathbeds took the vows that they might be buried in the habit of the order, and sovereigns, quitting the government of their kingdoms, enrolled themselves among the holy fraternity and bequeathed even their dominions to the master and the brethren of the temple. To increase the enthusiasm in favor of the Templars, and still further to swell their ranks with the best and bravest of the European chivalry, St. Bernard, at the request of Hugh de Payens, took up his powerful pen in their behalf. In a famous discourse in praise of the new chivalry, the holy abbot sets forth, in eloquent and enthusiastic terms, the spiritual advantages and blessings enjoyed by the military friars of the temple over all other warriors. He draws a curious picture of the relative situations and circumstances of the secular soldiery and the soldiery of Christ, and shows how different in the sight of God are the bloodshed and slaughter of the one from that committed by the other.
The devout army of Christ, earnestly incited by the example of its king, thinking indeed that the holy places are much more impiously and insufferably polluted by the infidels than when defiled by merchants, abide in the holy house with horses and with arms, so that from that, as well as all the other sacred places, all filthy and diabolical madness of infidelity being driven out, they may occupy themselves by day and by night in honourable and useful offices. They emulously honour the temple of God with sedulous and sincere oblations, offering sacrifices therein with constant devotion, not indeed of the flesh of cattle after the manner of the ancients, but peaceful sacrifices, brotherly love, devout obedience, voluntary poverty. These things are done perpetually at Jerusalem, and the world is aroused, the islands hear, and the nations take heed from afar.
St. Bernard then congratulates Jerusalem on the advent of the soldiers of Christ and declares that
the holy city will rejoice with a double joy in being rid of all her oppressors, the ungodly, the robbers, the blasphemers, murderers, perjurers, and adulterers, and in receiving her faithful defenders and sweet consolers, under the shadow of whose protection Mount Zion shall rejoice, and the daughters of Judah sing for joy.